So why don't we dive right in by interpreting one of the easiest events in the last 20 years of American history.
That you're here and you're putting your efforts and you're putting reputations, you're putting relationships on the line to do the right thing for this country because you are ready to make America great again.
Is she right? Because I know that's the popular version of what went on there. I know a lot of people like to believe that. I wish I could, but I was there. I wasn't here in the classroom, hoping I was right, thinking about it.
You know, it's not about the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. It's about the people of America. And what I have been seeing recently is political operatives and parties once again trying to assert themselves and trying to thwart the will of the people. I find that that is an extraordinarily dangerous place to be right now. And, you know, I want the voice of the people to be heard.
Well, I didn't know you wanted to get involved with the discussion, Mr. Helper. But since you want to help, maybe you can help me, okay? Why? Say it! Say it!
Where is this idiot from? How'd they dig this creep up? Answer. It's quite simple. The people are stupid. Did you know that the millennial so-called generation, the drug addicts who are raised on Adderall, Ritalin, and other drugs, who are stupid, they may look pretty and smart, they're morons.
Good answer. Good answer. I like the way you think. I'm going to be watching you.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Welcome everyone to another broadcast of Battle for Freedom. I'm your host Watson Prunier, and I'm glad that you are listening in. I hope you had a chance to enjoy and chuckle at that little opening, the opening clip that I shared with you as I took you to a familiar movie, Back to School, with Rodney Dangerfield and Sam Kinison. So an all too familiar scene that rings in the hearts of countless individuals. And as we sit here and you are taken back to school, I want to talk to you today about pubic education. I didn't say that wrong. I said pubic education. And I think that as we talk about the topic and realize where America is right now, we can make better sense of the decisions that we're making. Again, I'm your host, Watson Prunier, boldly broadcasting to you from Lanterns Radio Network, where we're here to fix the machine. And I'm glad you're joining me. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is @WatsonPrunier. That's WATSONPRUNIER. My website, go to www.battleforfreedom.com. And on Facebook, you can go to facebook.com/Our Battle for Freedom. I want to talk about a past event. There was a Super Tuesday where Donald Trump wound up sweeping many states, and there was so much fallback and so much in the news about how he had won. And I believe that we can almost tie in the results of those primaries and every primary that's happened before then, and even the ones in Indiana. We can tie this into even this broadcast as we talk about the education system. Before you get into a tizzy and think that I'm insulting you, hear me out. It's your choice, whoever you want to follow, whichever candidate you want to support, whichever candidate you desire. However, I want you to understand that there are consequences for those decisions. You know, there's this great quote that I think has been attributed to George Santayana. It says, "Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it." Again, let me repeat. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. You know, before I start talking to you about the problems with our education system, I want to take a little stroll with you. I want to take a stroll with you down the lane where I believe the greatest problem is America's memory system. You know, how quickly have we forgotten what has gotten us to the point where we are today? America is in shambles. I believe far worse, and I think that many of you can agree with me on this. I believe that America is far worse than it really should be And this is all because of the hope and change mantra that we heard 7 years later. America is trying to recover from this joke of an administration. I believe that many of us can sit there and agree that, he's only yielding to the people behind the scenes who are pulling the strings. This guy's a junior senator with little to no experience in government, and the few votes that he made stood on any principles, where the majority of his other votes were just present. And now, somehow, we're supposed to believe that we're going to elect a junior statesman with no political experience, nor true leadership experience to run this country at its highest level, from its highest office. Worse, I want us to consider this. Worse is the fact that on more than one occasion, this person has shown his lack of understanding in the political process, in foreign affairs, and let alone the Christian faith that he doesn't believe in. And I want us to really want us to be honest about this. I really want us to consider the fact that we decried foul on the liberal progressives. We just screamed from the top of our throats. We were so happy to point out the inconsistencies. We were so happy to point our fingers at the liberal progressives because of the blind faith decisions that they were making, because of the fact that everyone was so swooned by Obama as he came in on his charismatic surfboard. And he came into the hearts of countless Americans, and he became elected the 44th president of the United States of America. And everybody's so angry about that people are worshiping Obama, that people were calling him the Messiah, and considering, and some to this day still consider him a Messiah, and believe that he almost can walk on water. We called him out. We called progressives out for that. And now we think that the Trump train is going to make a personal stop at the stations in our life and contribute to making our lives better somehow. Wrong. I mean, the only thing the Trump train's going to do, if you really want to be honest about it, is this going to leave train tracks over our souls. That's over the souls of people who have compromised their values to support the most narcissistic candidate since Hitler. Yes, I went there. Why? Because conservative radio has lambasted every liberal progressive for the last 30 years. Because those people, you remember, that's how we consider them. Those liberals, they got behind a personality, an icon, and an allusion to innovation and progress. Yet we're doing the same exact thing with Trump. We decried so long ago that presidents don't create jobs. Dumbest thing I've ever heard. But now, that's one of the biggest things, one of the biggest selling points from most Trump supporters. Really? What changed? What changed in less than a year that would cause such a contradiction to the values and truths that we once held dear? Because I really need to understand this is, how is it that we can say that Obama can't create jobs, but now we're considering that Trump somehow can create jobs and make America better for us? Really? Are you sure or certain that you want to go down that path? I've got a passage I want you to hear. Take and listen to this.
But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But he must ask in faith without any doubting. For the one who doubts is like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For that man ought not to expect that he will receive anything from the Lord, being a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways.
Now, when you hear double-minded, and unstable, I mean, it's time for us to make better decisions. The people think that, you get all this education, and I've seen a lot of people with a lot of letters behind their name, and they still make dumb decisions. They still blindly follow wrong ideologies, wrong ways of thinking and processing, and they've been to school for life, and they still can't get basic concepts together. But I find this passage interesting that we just heard about being unstable and double-minded. I think that's what I see when I hear a lot of people are contradicting themselves. Because listen, we have abandoned all reason to put who we feel will be the best to lead our country in place without properly understanding that this election process is nothing but another reality TV show. You've heard me talk about this in the past. You've heard me talk about this in previous broadcast. As I mentioned how this is so much like the Hunger Games, and we're believing that we're putting all our energy and all our hopes into this one particular candidate who's going to sit there and tear another person apart. But honestly, he has no power to affect any change. No true power. And we've lost the art of discernment and critical thinking. We're too busy being entertained, and that's all this Donald Trump brings to us. So much so that I want you to hear the song that was created by a couple of guys about the Donald. Take a listen.
Job market slow, and you got nowhere to go. Who can you turn to but the Donald? Economy's got you down, there's no money to be found. Who can you turn to but the Donald?
Donald!
That's good. You got it.
Oh, my voice just gave out. I'm sorry.
Frankie's got the laryngitis.
It's all right.
Donalditis from screaming above the crowd.
Now, as you listen to that song, I'm not gonna sit here and act like there haven't been people who've made songs for other candidates who are running for political office. There are many other people who came in on unique songs, and they have followers who will go out there and make their little lyrics for them. But this is interesting because I want you to hear the dialogue that happened as these guys were being interviewed. And this was their response when they were confronted about the behavior of Donald Trump. So in the article, it talks about they were asked about some of Trump's tough talk, referring to Mexican immigrants as rapists, calling for a ban on all Muslims entering the country, or comments seen as encouraging violence against protesters at his rallies. Reinhardt and Zentro said that that's been completely overblown. He's a New Yorker. Reinhardt said, we all talk like that. That was the guy's response. Well, I'm from New York, and I'm going to tell you, I don't talk like that. It's been 20 years since I've been in New York, and if I watch a few episodes of NYPD Blue, I could probably completely get my New York accent back. But not all New Yorkers think like him. To make that blanket statement and say that's the New York way, isn't this what we challenge so many challenge crews on, talking about New York values? And if what Donald Trump is portraying is New York values, are you surprised Crew said what he said? And honestly, should New Yorkers be offended when most people believe that Donald Trump represents what the country wants to see? But let me move on. But so they said, but in the article, but should presidential hopefuls be held to a higher standard for what they say? Reinhardt thinks that hasn't worked so far. His response: we've been holding these presidential candidates to this higher standard, being presidential, and we've had very few that really did what they were supposed to do, and that we're honest. He said, Zentro admits that after the first Republican debate in Cleveland, when Trump sparred with the Fox News host Megyn Kelly, he wrote to Trump a letter. I made a suggestion that he should take the edge off of the way he presents his ideas, Zentro said. He didn't receive a response, but he thinks Trump's personality is what the nation needs now. And he's not about the frills. He's not about patting people on that back. He's not about trying to be a nice guy, trying to be a smooze, or he's about calling things the way that they are, And I think that based on that, I think he's what his success is attributable to. That's what Zentro said. And so I'm sitting here thinking, like, okay, so the one thing that glared out for me is that he says he thinks Trump's personality is what the nation needs now. You remember what I was saying earlier about the whole idea that people get so wrapped up into a personality? There you have it. It's not about professionalism. It's not about character and integrity. It's about being entertained. We do not want to be challenged intellectually. We just want to be entertained. You know, when I consider movies like The Running Man with Richard Dawson and Arnold Schwarzenegger, when I consider the people who love to see pit bulls, you know, fighting one another and tearing each other apart in dog fights, you know, when I consider how people could have enjoyed the blood and gore of the gladiators and coliseums long ago, I think I finally understand how the personality of Donald Trump could be seen as a good thing for America. You know, between boxing and ultimate fighting, we are excited to see people show their physical prowess over another combatant to the point that seeing a little blood is acceptable for our entertainment. And it's interesting how much blood we're willing to see even in these politics. You know, I hadn't seen the movie Concussion, but the idea that the NFL, consider this, the idea that the NFL ignored the counsel of these doctors to protect these players says all that we need to know. Entertain at all costs. Sounds very familiar. You know, it's almost like they act like it's a video game. We just press the reset button and start all over again. The only problem is that we're dealing with real people who are permanently damaged because entertainment is more important than enlightenment. That's probably why people are so content to be undereducated, because they have not seen the real fruits in applying yourself at a collegiate level or any kind of studious level. That's what's been seriously lacking. People see that it's more fruitful to be entertained or just enjoy life rather than getting an education and understanding that you don't have to subject yourself to some of the most debased things that are being readily acceptable in our society. You know, you've heard the stories of people who left school to pursue jobs that go into music, acting, sports, or even porn and make millions. It's interesting. They will leave well-paying jobs and probably make decent money for the first couple of years, but they never have the instruction on how to be good stewards of the resources that have been entrusted to them or they've been blessed with. You know, people are not seeking to be intellectually enlightened. They want enhanced penises and breasts and butts, you know, because we can see naked women on, you know, popping champagne bottles over their back and onto a dish or a glass sitting on their butt. That draws more attention rather than something collegiate, something impressive, or some bit of history that someone's never heard before. It's really sad because so many people are looking to entertain, be entertained, have attention drawn to them rather than living a simple life. I mean, I think you could be successful. I think I've met many scientists. I've met many brilliant people who blow me away, who make me feel like an idiot compared to what I know. But they have applied themselves and are making a difference in society. I mean, you don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be involved in the life sciences / diagnostics community. You could be in the education community, work at a college. Well, your job might be limited there because you've got candidates trying to get students in there for free. So take a gamble working there, but you just won't get paid. But the problem that we run into is life has been dumbed down to being entertained, not educated. And I think that the reason why we are running into this problem where you can't even call it public education anymore, I want to consider pubic education, because there's so little to be learned. There's so little of great importance that's being learned. Not so little to be learned, but the fact that the schools aren't focusing on the key issues that create great leaders for tomorrow. And here we are, we're completely dumbfounded when we see kids who are even working in fast food restaurants who can't even do the proper change on a bill that's maybe $8.12 and they're giving a $10 bill. And they don't know how to do the addition or subtraction or whatever to actually give back the right change. Many of them still can't count, and they're working in restaurants. They're taking menial labor jobs because of the fact that they didn't apply themselves truly hard in school. And a lot of people are upset. A lot of people are dissatisfied with their lives because of the fact that they don't have the proper education. But who do you blame on that? Who do you blame when people are not applying themselves? They're not putting in the right time and effort and energy to better their lives, but it's everyone else's responsibility to make certain that they can be successful. Here's an interesting thing I heard. As we sit here and need to make better decisions, it begins honestly with us making or coming to the conclusion that we can think logically. And so you sit here and you ask me, well, Watson, what's logic? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Norm Geisler and Ronald Brooks, in a book called Come Let Us Reason, which was an introduction to logical thinking, said logic really means putting your thoughts together. Putting our thoughts, what we think about, in a natural order. And here they even go on to say, logic is the way to think so that we can come to correct conclusions by understanding implications and the mistakes people often make in thinking. Now check that out. It's because of the fact that it's the way to think so that we can make correct conclusions. So that means that there have been incorrect conclusions that have been made by a lot of people in society. I would say some of the incorrect conclusions that I've made in the past is believing that I can sit here and continue to spend more money than I'm bringing in, and I can live on credit and believe that there won't be a consequence to living that lifestyle. So if I lose, the creditors come and decide that they want to take back equipment, for me. If they want to kick me out of my home, if they want to do whatever, they're within their right because of the fact that I did not follow the requirements to maintain the property or whatever it is that I agreed to pay for. But people don't think about that because they're thinking, okay, I want immediate satisfaction now. I need to be entertained, so I'm going to spend all this money that I don't have. I'm going to put everything on credit, and I'm going to be happy. I'm going to feel good about myself because I spent all this money. That was the flawed thinking that I had before, and now I have all these bills that need to be paid off. I have all these creditors that need to be paid back. Had I chosen to live within my means, I would not be strained the way I am right now. That was bad thinking. There was an incorrect conclusion to believe that I could live that way without there being a penalty. And the idea of understanding the implications that I will lose things if I don't pay for them. And people often make these decisions, whether it's in marriage, whether it's in life, single life, wherever it is, they're making horrible decisions that are ruining their opportunities to be successful in life. And I believe that it begins with our failure to understand how to think logically and understand the poor decisions that we made. I want to talk a little bit more about those poor decisions that people make. People coming into these incorrect conclusions and continually making bad decisions without caring about the implications of those decisions when we come back. This is Watson Prunier on Battle for Freedom on Lanterns Radio Network. Catch you on the flip side.
Doug, I never thought I could go back to school, but when it's this easy, it fits.
I'm right there with you, Jackie, taking classes, watching lectures in the living room on the iPad. It's not hard.
I can be a mom, make dinner, get my classwork done, and not miss a moment with my family. It's amazing.
Yes, it is.
Hey, it's Jackie Velasquez, and if Doug and I can do this, you can do this too. Higher education with Liberty University Online.
Find out more about completing your college degree at the world's largest Christian university, Liberty University. Get all the details right now. Grab your cell and dial pound 250. When prompted, say the keyword Liberty University.
Training champions for Christ since 1971. Liberty University Online. Find out more about learning online. Dial pound 250. Then say the keyword Liberty University.
Liberty University Online with hundreds of degree programs to choose from. Call now, pound 250. Say the keyword Liberty University.
That's pound 250. Say keyword Liberty University.
So one of the things that, Trey, you and I have talked about quite a bit was this idea of the materialism, right?
Right.
People say, oh, well, you're materialistic. You revere your wealth. You know, you have a zeal for your wealth, right? So the idea of the French Revolution was built on materialism. So here we have a leader that talks about being greedy. We got to get greedy for America. We have to grab and grab and grab. You know, he talks about the greatness of America being as a material wealth, not of spiritual wealth, you know?
That's a great point, Chris.
And we're seeing the people that were in this Tea Party movement that have been telling us all along that we don't need to discuss religious and social issues because they're not winning issues. And at the same breath, they are supporting a man who says we need to make America great again, and they don't know why we were great in the first place.
But I don't want that to just pass by, dude. That's a great point. He has said things like America is great because of stuff. He has said that the materialism of America is what its greatness is.
Right.
Dude, that puts today's entire show in context right there.
You are listening to the Battlefield Live radio program with Chris and Trey from Lanterns.buzz and Battlefield.buzz. Follow us on Twitter at LanternsBuzz and Facebook at LanternsBuzz. You will be pleasantly surprised. We are here to fix the machine.
Hi, I'm Sam, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Dr. Larry Arnn on the 3 branches of government.
There's a lot of confusion these days about the relationship of the 3 branches of government, especially among many who are in government. Some think the judiciary sits atop the other 2 branches, the legislative and the executive. Others think the president sits above Congress and the courts. In fact, all 3 branches are equally accountable to the Constitution and therefore to the people who made the Constitution. The President, members of Congress, and federal judges all take an oath to the Constitution. In making the laws, Congress must adhere to the Constitution. In executing the laws, the President must abide by the Constitution. In interpreting the laws, judges are bound by the Constitution. All the people's representatives are accountable to the Constitution, and therein lies our liberty.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Battle for Freedom. I'm your host, Watson Prunier, and I appreciate that you're still listening in. As we're sitting here talking about pubic education and the lack of education in America today, I'm brought to something that we consider with the arguments that we're seeing from an ideological perspective, from political perspective, as we see people go back and forth on social media. You know, I hate someone puts Y-O-U-R instead of Y-O-U''re. Yes, is it dumb? Does it need to be pointed out? Yes, but that can't be normally the weight of our argument when we're sitting here trying to have a discussion. And it shouldn't really even be an argument or a debate. We need to be having discussions with fellow Americans. I think that's another problem that's been missing in our education system, is being taught how to communicate with people, how to listen, but be able to listen and hear out what that person has to say, formulate it, chew on it, and then give time before you respond. Because I think most people have been programmed to automatically assume that people are going to be defending their point of view rather than and have a debate rather than have a discussion. And so we get into arguing about the truth of what people say, and there's any validity to what they say as they're trying to present their argument and support their particular candidate. You know, what's interesting is we sit here and we talk about truth and validity. I'm still in the book, Come Let Us Reason by Geisler and Brooks. As in this area that they talk about truth and validity, they say there's a difference between truth and validity. Validity is the concern of formal logic. It deals with how well the argument is put together, you know, its form. And truth comes from material logic. It deals with the content of the argument and whether the premises and conclusions can correctly respond to reality. Formal logic can be represented in symbols that have no material meaning, but truth can be found only in meaningful statements. You know, and as we see here, and a lot of people are completely wrapped up into the emotions of even the elections and the primaries and everything that's going on. And it's so sad because there's not truth. It's not truth that they're following behind. It's emotionalism, and they're sound bites that people are following, and they're not critically thinking through what they're saying and who they're supporting. I mean, consider this. I don't know if you were paying attention during the break and you listened to the comment from the Hillsdale person as they're making their promotion for Hillsdale College and the status of America right now, or the state of America and its youth who were involved in making these decisions. And he talked about the whole idea is they think the president sits above Congress and the courts. And this isn't just the youth. This is even older Americans. What's the chant right now in conservatism? Win at all costs. We have to defeat Hillary and Bernie, because we don't want them to appoint liberal judges. We don't want them to appoint and bring in these crazy laws and executive actions, because they're just going to destroy this country further than what Obama's done. Is that a possibility? Oh, definitely. But that argument of it can't be Hillary is not an issue of truth. It can't be a Democrat or a socialist is not an argument based on truth. It's on what we feel, what we would love to have. It's on trying to put an argument together as to why she shouldn't have the position, but it's not a truthful reason. It's not based on truth as to why she shouldn't be in that position. Because what removes Donald Trump, were he to be elected president, from doing the same exact thing that Barack Obama's done? I mean, for crying out loud, think about it. Bush was signing executive orders in. He went crazy with the pen. And Obama's done the same thing too. And what makes you think that Donald Trump won't put in liberal judges? What makes you think that Donald Trump won't put in liberal appointees or progressive appointees? I mean, you've seen him flip-flop on so many different things, but everybody's thinking we've got to control these highest seats. Would I like to make sure that we have a person of common sense up there? Yes, definitely. Do I want to see the continual boys club nonsense going on? Of course not. But it can never be put someone up there at all costs, regardless of who they are. And I think it's really sad that people are duped into believing that Donald Trump will actually abide by the law and truly respect the wishes of Americans. I mean, think about it. In the debate that they had, I think it was New Hampshire or wherever one it was, that you can find the recording on CNN, and they're going back and forth about Donald Trump hiring these 300 or 270 individuals for his company. And, and he brings in foreigners to take these particular jobs. Now, granted, again, if this is, if there were Americans who could get the job done and he's paying a reasonable salary, fine, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's his choice, it's his business about how he wants to spend his money. However, he's basically been talking about making America great again, dealing with the whole idea of penalizing businesses who take their business out of the country. Meanwhile, he's done that. He has businesses out of the country. His wife has businesses out of the country. And he's sitting here. Now, this is someone who truly was sold out for Americans. It shouldn't have to be at the political campaign where he's making this argument that he wants to make America great. And he's turning around and making certain that the jobs for Americans will be present and here. Because were that the case, he would have never hired any immigrants. He would never hired any immigrants coming into this country on temporary visas or not to work in his facilities. If he was consistent about that, you would see that pattern of lifestyle being lived out, but his lifestyle has been contrary to the very message that he's preaching. And when he was confronted about whether or not he used the people, he says, well, yeah, the law doesn't prevent me from actually hiring these people. I'm just working within the bounds of the law. So basically, here's a guy who basically says, and he admits that he hired illegals. He hired foreigners rather than hiring American citizens because of the fact that it was within the law that permitted him to do this. I find it very interesting that you keep working with the law or working within the very law that supposedly makes America bad. But no one wants to critically analyze those decisions that he's made. No one wants to critically sit through and weigh the discussions and the comments that he's made that are not, it's not just for show, it's really who he is. And I've heard the argument that people are saying, well, Donald Trump is, he's putting on a show right now because of the fact that he wants to win a segment of society. And I think you've heard that audio clip that was played earlier where people want this personality rather than a professional. I think it's very troubling. I think it's very troubling that we are sitting here and wanting an entertainer rather than an enlightener. Then there was this other part where, which kind of tends to lean on what we're talking about on this broadcast about Pubic Education, where Chris and Trey there was a clip of Chris and Trey on one of their shows, and it was heard during the break where it talks about you have a lot of people who are so behind Donald Trump and make America great again, and many of them don't even know what made America great in the first place. Many of them aren't even aware of the history of this nation, let alone the history of the world. And I find that very troubling because of the fact that none of them want to consider how much they flip-flop on their values because they're following someone who flip-flops on his opinions on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. And it's really sad because of the fact that there is no logic to it. It's just complete emotion. It's just complete emotion that prevents people from actually listening and analyzing and understanding the decisions that they're made. We can't be a smarter of America if we're not going to make the right decisions and follow through in critical thinking and understand that we are making poor decisions when we're letting our emotions drive us. Hear this. We're making too many mistakes and our emotions are driving us there at full steam. The Bible talks about the results of following our hearts rather than following reason. It says here in Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is more deceitful than all else, and it is desperately wicked. Who can understand it? Verse 10 goes on, because that seems very down. Don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but it does sound down, just to know that your heart can lead you astray. But the great hope is in verse 10 where it says, I, the Lord, search the heart. I test the mind, even to give to each man according to his ways, according to the result of his deeds. So at the end of the day, God will weigh out the decisions, good or bad, that we have executed in life. And I think the best way to close your eyes on this side of eternity is to actually have yourself secure in a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And that only begins by believing in the death, burial, and resurrection. And why did he have to die? He died for our sins. None of us are perfect. The scripture says it. None of us are good. None of us are right. None of us pursue even doing right. None of us do this. And so because we have these fallen lives where we make mistakes, sins, where we commit sins and we offend God, there's a price to pay for that. There's a consequence in the way that we're living, and that consequence is death, eternal separation from God. In hell, people sometimes celebrate and believe that it's going to be a huge party down there. I think that's part of the fact of another problem with our education system. Not just the education system in school, but even the education system in churches that prevent people from understanding the true depth of punishment and that there are consequences for poor decisions. So, we need to ask ourselves, why are we following our heart, and where is our heart leading us? And our decisions, are our decisions truly logically sound? And if we're wrong, admit it. Man up and admit that we were wrong and following faulty ideologies. Because of the fact that if we can't show the discernment, if we cannot turn around and actually have the wherewithal to understand the poor decisions that we make, how in the world can we be good leaders? How in the world can we even guide our children to the truth when we ourselves are struggling to embrace that very truth? It can't happen. It can't happen if we refuse to listen to sound wisdom and start applying things the correct way. We're in a lot of trouble, America, when we do not want to follow the truth and focus on what's right. If we don't think there's a consequence for our actions, we're in a lot of trouble. And you know what? Honestly, we're in trouble when we have a government that goes out of its way to bail us out of our responsibilities. I mean, you had the big bailouts when Obama came into office and he bailed out GM, blah, blah, yeah, whatever. I want to talk about the reality that here we have Obama going in and he is now writing off $7 to $8 billion in student debt for hundreds of thousands of students who are actually disabled graduates. You know what? Bravo. Nice for you to try and do something nice, Mr. Obama. However, I struggle with this decision because of the fact that, you're trying to appeal to a user base or a citizenship who are enamored with the idea of everything is free and there's no cost. There's no cost. And honestly, when we think about this free education, free education, free healthcare, free all this other, free housing, let's logically think through this. So a house gets built, a school gets built. There are people who work in the school, whether they're teachers, janitors, whether they're faculty, whatever role that they play, but there are people who work in these universities and these institutions. And so you have to ask yourself, how do they get paid? Well, you say more taxes. Well, more taxes from who? Because you have to get that money from someone. That means, oh, let's raise the taxes on the rich. Well, if they logically say, well, we want nothing more with this and we're going to take our money and leave, you have less money to pay for free school. You have less money to pay for free housing or free food or whatever. Logically, we never think about what is the ramifications of making everything for free. And now you see that the Affordable Care Act is not so affordable. When you get penalized for not getting insurance through your company, you have to pay at least $3,000. Really? I mean, how is that affordable? I mean, because there are people who can barely afford $100 to spend, and now we're being penalized to spend $3,200 or more for failing to take an optional thing. If you don't want health care, why be forced to take it? Especially if you don't get sick a lot. But I digress. I think it's very interesting that the other issue of these students not understanding why America is great in the first place. When Donald says, let's make America great, the kids aren't going to school to learn about the history of this country, about the history of the world. They're not getting those basic fundamental skills of understanding history, math, science, English, whatever it is, because we're too busy having them entertained. We've got them enrolled in sports activities. We've got them enrolled in music programs, whether they're singing in Glee Club or singing, performing in a choir or, a cappella, you name it. Everything is a Glee program. Everybody's about being entertained and no longer about being enlightened. And so our kids don't understand why people died 235 years ago to secure liberties that we take for granted today. And so they don't understand the personal struggles that blacks went through in the 1860s. Yes, was there a struggle in the 1950s and 1960s during the Jim Crow laws things? Yes, there was. But it was nothing like the way it was before 1860s when the Republicans stepped in and actually ended slavery, gave blacks their citizenship and the right to vote. Those people went through the true struggle because it was completely clear who spoke out against them, and they were completely unable to reconcile themselves back to a free lifestyle, to the liberties that they should have enjoyed since they first come to this country. Well, see, our kids don't understand that. They completely believe that the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King were the only ones that truly made a difference in bringing about some kind of level of freedom and success for blacks in this country. And it happened at least 100 years before Martin Luther King came on the scene. But our kids don't know that. Our kids don't know the fact that there are as much as twice as many white slaves around before blacks became slaves in this country. White slaves that were taken from Europe, but they don't know that. So much that our kids are focusing on these things that have no lasting value that can assist them with anything. They're adept in playing video games and memorizing foolish things. But when it comes to being really in tune with what's taking place, not just in the world, but even in books, that people won't even think about entertaining the idea of a Jeopardy because of the fact that it seems like too lofty of an idea to get involved in a program like that. You can get it done. The question is, are you willing to make the sacrifices to learn and know what they do know on Jeopardy? Or will you just lazily sit back and expect that everybody is going to provide for you? Sadly, they're going out of their way to make that a reality. They're going out of their way to make that a reality in this country where you can turn around and start seeing that, schools are focusing on, our schools are so fixated with this transgender nonsense that we're focusing more on sexuality rather than science, rather than social studies. And when I think of social studies, I think of us studying other countries, That's what social studies was for me going to school. I don't know, just the idea of hearing social studies makes me believe that it's some of this mamby-pamby nonsense that's coddling our children and keeping them from getting true instruction. And so now our kids are focusing on these social issues, and they can barely add, they can barely spell, they can barely read. You know, this whole bathroom for everyone idea nonsense. You know, I don't bring this up because of the fact that Trump affirms it. I said, but the fact that this insane issue has become more important than the security of our children. That bathroom privileges has become more important than keep maintaining the innocence of our children, because we believe that entertaining everybody's thoughts is more important. No matter how destructive the idea is, we're going to follow through and make sure that everybody can enjoy this liberty. They already have the liberty of going to the restrooms. They just want to force everybody to adopt to their destructive tendencies and ways. And to sit here and believe that pervs are not going to take advantage of the situation is really more disturbing, and it goes to show you how illogical most Americans are. And the fact that we have people in ruling positions and deciding positions who have the ability to bring down legislation that could promote a destructive ideology and lifestyle, that shows you that there's a major lack of education in America, because people will not think of the consequences that will come through as a result of some of these ridiculous legislations that are being passed over the last several months. It's really sad, people, and I'm really, because we reduced politics and education down to secondary social, to social issues rather than the real problems that prevent us from being truly successful. More kids today, they know more about sports athletes, they know more about music and movie stars than they do about the history of this country or the world. And they can memorize the lyrics of most rappers' songs, but they can't tell you the quadratic equation. People use the argument, I don't use that, or there's never a need for this in the real life. Well, if you limit yourself and what you can do in the real world, you'll never see the fruits of actually taking advantage of pre-calculus, calculus, or physics, and some of these what's the one I want to get involved in astrophysics. To get involved in astrophysics, you can never understand that stuff because of the fact that we've been limited. We've been told that those things don't apply in the future. They do now. Oh, they do apply. They do apply. You may not use it flipping fries, but you will if you're working in a university. You will if you're working working for a company that could potentially be focusing on life-saving techniques, working in companies that are figuring out ways to travel throughout space, or even create alternative fuel resources in this world, or figure out a way to recycle some of the refuse in this country and use it as a recyclable or renewable energy. That's where the math and all those other things come into play. But if that's not what you're striving for, because that's too geeky, that's too goofy, that's too plain Jane, and not enough of being in the limelight and spotted by everyone, you can't blame everyone else as to why you don't have great opportunities when you limit yourself. And it's really sad because of the fact that when you think about this, in this technology age, it's more simpler for most kids because of the fact that they've been dependent on the school systems. They've been dependent on their technology to get them the answers that they're looking for. They're dependent on the government to give them the money and the answers so that they can function with little resistance possible, because everybody's doing everything for them. How do you learn if you never take the opportunity to work a situation out on your own to the point where you've exhausted all options, and your last requirement is you just have to go and find help from somebody because of the fact that you've exhausted all the possible scenarios on resolving the issue and none of them have worked? But we don't understand logic, we don't understand reason, we don't understand processing through the consequences of our actions because of the fact that we're too busy being entertained. Our education system is failing because our entertainment system is too prevailing. Everybody wants to be educated. I mean, not educated. Everybody wants to be entertained, and no one wants to no one wants to really hear the things that matter. And so our kids are being inundated with stupidity rather than in the scientific studies that allow them to be great contributors in society. Don't believe me? Think about this. You have teachers who are being accused of brainwashing the children because of the fact that they're being involved and taught these politically correct things rather than focusing on the things that really matter. Their kids are being taught about politically correct lessons and attitudes towards homosexuality. I'm not saying that we can't learn how to actually have a conversation with another individual. I'm not saying that that's a wrong thing. But when we sit here and we're focusing on our kids, understanding about sex education when they're too young, because this is more important. Teachers have been receiving unacceptable emails and posts on social media. People they're talking about these legitimate social controversial topics. Yeah, you can talk about it briefly, but what about the rest of the lesson? What about the lesson plan? Because this is where it injects. You have the wrong teacher who is completely sold out on socialism, completely sold out on social justice, and has no desire in teaching the kids how to add, how to read. And you have more and more children who grow up completely ignorant to what is preventing them from being successful in life. Because playing a Nintendo Wii or playing Call of Duty or playing on your video game, whatever it is, on your iPhone, that's more important than actually applying yourself to learning something. And this is the problem that we have, is that the kids are not seeing that there are consequences to their actions, so they just basically live whatever way that they want to. And our teachers aren't holding them accountable. Our teachers aren't holding them accountable to do the right thing, so we just continue to just let them live whatever way that they want because of the fact that at the end of the day, we don't care. Who cares? What we want you to do is we want you to feel good about yourself. We want you to feel great about yourself and not worry about those stupid standards. To the point that in Oregon, we're worried about their parents were furious because of the fact that their 9-year-old kids in elementary school are being shown video footage and lessons on masturbation, nudity, sex education, and things like that. This is what they're being taught at 9 years of age. We're focusing so much on entertainment all the way down to such young ages that there's no room for them to actually have their brains properly process things because they've been filled with so much crap that there's no room for them to retain anything of worth value because they're constantly being bombarded by all this foolishness. And now you also have, even in Europe, where you have people who are honestly committing into the realization that their classrooms and their schools are overwhelmed because of the migrant explosion that's come into the country. And now you have all these people who are coming into the country and not enough teachers to teach them. So now that this means that the teachers will now have to spend less time on the current topic and spend more time on trying to keep, make sure that everyone in the class is caught up. And God forbid they have to be told, don't you point out that this is a problem, because we'll kick you out, we'll penalize you, we'll fire you for mentioning the truth that our systems are overwhelming. We can't take all these kids that have been brought into the school system. We can't take care of them, but we're gonna be there to coddle them and make them feel important about themselves. Here's the crazy thing. British children, white British children, are overtaken by 10 other ethnic groups by the age of 16. It shows that families do not support them enough in school. White students were above the top achievers at 5, but slipped down to 16. Children without English as the first language are getting more help to catch up. And the working class white children are let down by the system. Now, this is not a slam against the immigrants, but when you have a government system and you have an education system that's not properly planned to handle the influx of students who are not able to function at the same level as everybody else, that means that everybody else suffers. rather than having a plan, rather than saying, oh, let's just take all these people in without a plan of execution. I mean, why not hire more, get more individuals who can actually teach these kids who are coming in from other countries? But that would require planning. That would require logical thinking. That would require reviewing our thoughts that led us up to the point where this is failing. Because, I mean, even after several months of all these millions of immigrants that have been coming into this country, you would think that they'd revisit their plan and how they were executing this. But no, they're still going on. They're still going on. So why should the children feel a need to make right decisions when you have governments and leadership that refuse to do something different? They do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, which is the definition of insanity. And our kids are watching it, sitting in their kitchens, sitting in their living rooms, sitting in their bedrooms, as they're watching this on the national scale of people making poor decisions, and there are no consequences to those poor decisions. And so much so that now, because of the fact that the teachers are overwhelmed, you now have teachers who are going out there and they're putting the answers to the quizzes and the exams online. And so if people happen to stumble upon it, they stumble upon it. But guess what? We're making sure that they're graduating. We've given them all the answers, just like the school programs that lets these black kids or white kids who can't read, who cannot write, and instead of hurting their feelings and giving them the proper corrections and leaving them back, they keep pushing them forward. They keep pushing them forward and pushing them forward to the point that they graduate, they get their degree, they're out there and they're flipping fries. And when it's time for them to go to college, they spend 2 or 3 different semesters on just remedial studies before they can even get into the core stuff to actually start working toward their degree. There's no accountability in the education system, which makes the education system flawed if there is no standard by which people will adhere to a standard, follow that standard, and lift up their students to the same exact standard. We can never be successful if this is the way that we're being taught in our school systems and expect different results. Like I said, the definition of insanity is doing things over and over again and expecting the same result. I'm going to tell you how you're going to get this fixed here. Stop expecting everybody else to do and fix your problems for you. Stop thinking these political candidates are going to fix your situation. You can go to a public library and get an education. You can learn so many of the things that you will learn in college if you sit there and apply yourself. Go to the library and pick up a book. Study English, study physics, study science, study whatever it is for free at the public libraries. And then when you're ready to go to a college and get your degree, apply yourself because you already studied the material and you're ready to take those classes. You know, I'm on the 50-year bachelor program because it's taking me forever to get my degree. And finally, I want to go back at the age of 50 in 5 years and start taking school again. I want to be able, hopefully I can actually get most of my bills out of the way. So when it comes time for me to go to school, I can just pay for my education rather than me taking out loans to basically go through school. And I encourage you to do the same thing as well too. You know, you're sitting here, you're just sitting on your back, you're doing nothing, and you're making all these kind of excuses as to why you can't apply yourself. But those libraries haven't gone anywhere. And if you don't want to go to the library, guess what? If you have internet access, you've got a lot of schools out there offering free courses. It may not apply toward a degree, but you can still take these free courses and get prepared for taking those courses when you're ready to go to a college and do that. But to sit here and expect free education, free all these different things, and not understand that someone has to pay for those things, and in the end of the day, it may wind up being you when you have a decent paying job, but you'll be mad then because you don't want anyone taking your money, but you have a problem of taking other people's money. That's completely illogical. There is no justification in that behavior. Theft is theft. And I'm not excusing the behavior of people on the upper scale who are abusing the system and taking advantage of the system. We have a flawed system that's basically told us that we could take advantage of it at the expense of other Americans. That's morally wrong. It's morally wrong when we're basically putting the burdens of responsibility on the shoulders of other individuals rather than being responsible for our own decisions. To get out of pubic education and public education to a true education, you have to make that your priority. We have to make our education a priority if we endeavor to have a better paying job and be in a better position to provide for our families. Period. That's your solution. Show the wherewithal, show the stick-to-itiveness to pursue your own education, even if it means you get no support whatsoever. You know, there's a school that I'd love to have my two-year-old going to, or soon-to-be two-year-old. And they have 2-year-olds in the school program who already have the ability to read at 2 years of age. There are Americans, white, black, Hispanic, who can't even read and they're 17. Push through the system. But here, there are schools, if you're willing to make the sacrifice and you believe that your child's education is that important, you make the investment. Stop spending money on stupid cars or spinning rims or even cable TV if it means that you can actually get your kid into a respectable school. But that responsibility is yours, not the government's. And until we can get the majority of Americans understanding that nothing is for free, the education system will continue to decline because there will be unpaid balances on these degrees and no place to work. I'm Watson Cormier, your host from Battle for Freedom on Lanterns Radio Network. Take care.